Hello, I am Vladimir Shirogorov, a historian, and author of the books War on the Eve of Nations, Conflict and Militaries in Eastern Europe, 1450-1500, and Strategies of Ukrainian War, 1500-1800, that's now in print, and also of many other books and essays in Russian and English, published in the United States, Russia, Germany, Italy, and other countries. It's webinar 5 in the series of webinars preceding my course, Competitive Strategy, Experience of Wars, that I am going to teach at the end of May, and the access to which will be open soon. Today we discuss hybrid warfare. That is a direct continuation to the preceding webinar that was committed to the revolution in military affairs a week ago. However, today's webinar is maybe more important because revolution in military affairs was a military episode in the long military history of humankind that continued maybe 50 years, maybe it would continue a bit longer, but it still belongs to the industrial epoch of warfare. But the period of hybrid warfare that is starting today is going to open the new military epoch of the humankind history that will be maybe 100, maybe 200 years long, according to the long waves of the development of the military craft that we touch today. So, today we discuss the new military revolution, the advance of the epoch of hybrid warfare in comparison with the epoch of the military revolution in the early modern period. And the comparison is very important because it is the most effective tool for the student of history to determine the true nature of things under discussion. So, what is hybrid warfare? And where is the epoch of hybrid warfare heading? I also propose you my slide to this webinar in the same way as other slides to my other webinars and the slides and textbook that I prepare for my course. They give much more information than the verbal discussion, because the verbal discussion is normally limited by frames of time and verbal way of information, but written slides and written text are more rich for arguments and examples. I place the slides for my webinar on my channel with Telegram, where you could download it or read. So, what is hybrid warfare? The concept of hybrid warfare was invented by the American military experts to discuss the new challenges that the American army met in the conflicts in the second half of the 20th century in such regions as Indochina, Caribbean, Cuba, and so on. In these regions, the American army met new challenges, such as the social upheavals, actions of non-governmental armed groups, informational and propaganda warfare, the military actions and non-military actions directed to overthrow the regimes loyal to the United States and so on. The American army was not able to cope with these challenges properly, and to prepare it for this kind of warfare, the concept of hybrid war was born. However, since an expert, Frank Hoffman, proposed it in the middle of 2000s, the concept of hybrid warfare substantially changed. It flourished due to linguistic attractiveness of this phrase, hybrid warfare, and due to necessity to describe the current military events with some other lexics, that traditional military lexics of the industrial military epoch. First of all, we have to pay our attention to a phenomenon that not all nations over the globe and not all armies and not in all conflicts switch to hybrid war. For example, the conflict between India and Pakistan that is developing on our eyes develops not as a hybrid conflict, but as a classic conflict of the late industrial epoch, as it was framed by the Soviet military thinker Nikolai Ogarkov and American military strategist Andrew Marshall. It is high-tech conventional warfare where each of the sides is deterred in its action by the nuclear capabilities of its enemy. Another military conflict that we can observe, the last in the series of wars between the Palestinian population and Israel, develops like hybrid war topsy-turvy, because it is suppression of the Palestinian hybrid warfare by the Israelis' industrial military machine. And only one big bulging conflict could be characterized as hybrid today. It's war between Russia and Ukraine that started in its hot phase in 2022 and really started maybe 10 years ago as a confrontation of Russia and its allies and Ukraine and its Western patrons over Ukraine, over its affiliation and over its status in the international relations. This important conflict is learned by the experts in warfare to determine what is hybrid warfare and what is the new military epoch in humankind history, and how it's linked in general with the social structure of humankind and with a new period of economic development. Is the Ukrainian conflict a special page in the military history of the 21st century? And does it open the new epoch, military epoch, in history of humankind? The experts who discuss hybrid war are divided or could be divided into three groups. The first group is the group of military historians who study hybrid war comparing with other long waves of the military development, such as industrial military epoch or epoch of the military revolution, they strive to determine what is hybridity of war, does it exist, and if it exists, what's its principal features and its nature. The historians to attend in this group are Jeremy Black, Mark Charles Fissel, Colin Gray, Lawrence Friedman, and Virgilio Hillary. On the side of my slides, there are sums of the covers of their books, so you could find them and learn their opinion about hybrid war. The second group of experts studying hybrid war are specialists in international relations. They are not interested in hybrid war as in combat, in its military sense, but they are interested in political movements, in political relations around war, in the decision-making process, in the budget spendings, in the actions of political figures, because many of the experts are advisors to the current politicians who manage their states in the ongoing epoch of hybrid war. The most important figures in this group are Dmitry Odima Adamsky, Alexander Dugin, Mark Galeotti, Ofer Friedman, and Andrei Kokoshin. There is another group of experts adjacent to this group of specialists in international relations. They are military and political futurists. That's very popular craft today. Among the number of them, George Friedman is an author worth to follow undoubtedly. The third group of experts discussing hybrid warfare consists of the current military leaders and political leaders who manage their armies and countries in the current conflicts. It's mostly closed group, and to understand their opinion about hybrid war is very complicated task, because they reveal something only in their interviews, small article in newspapers, and in some phrases. However, there are a group of scholars who accompany the activity of military leaders and politicians, and we can understand their opinion about hybrid warfare studying the writing of these scholars. The names that it was to attend in this group are Valery Gerasimov, Mahmoud Gareev, Andrew Krepinevich, Mark Mandeles, Victoria Nuland, and a group of authors associated with the American think tank RAND Corporation. All three groups have their achievements in understanding of hybrid war and deserve close attention. However, it's impossible to discuss everything, all the shades of their understanding of hybrid war in one webinar. If you like to continue, please write me. And I prepare some special topic, special webinar about one or another group of thinkers and about some understanding members of them. In brief, the first group, the historians who analyze hybrid war, consider, and it is very important, they consider that hybridity is a nature of war. From the very beginning, from the very dawn of this social phenomenon. And in the best way, this idea is presented in the title Hybrid Warfare, Fighting Complex Opponents from the Ancient World to the Present, that was edited by Williamson, Murray and Peter Mansour, who are an example of hybrid co-authoring because they enjoy both the academic expertise and experience of practical military commanding. Hybridity is a nature of warfare, especially on the strategic level, where all kinds of dangers, of threats, and must be considered, and all kinds of forces must be applied to survive in the confrontation with the enemy and get upper hand. Hybridity is also a feature of combined states and armies that are composed with different strategic cultures, with the structures and troops of different strategic cultures. For example, Jeremy Black finds hybridity in Mongolian warfare in China in the 13th century, where the mounted bow shooters of the Mongols were combined with the Chinese equipment of siegecraft. Another example is the Manchu warfare in China in the 17th century, where the Manchu mounted bowmen were combined with the Chinese infantry equipped with firearms and artillery. Mark Charles Fisher promotes very important understanding of hybridity of war as overlapping of different huge warfare formations. For example, pre-industrial formation that dominated warfare in the Middle Ages and early modern period, and industrial warfare that dominates it from the 19th century up to today. All the elements from the past military formations that are used today and that are not comply with the current mainstream of warfare are the elements of hybridity. In the same way, all kinds of future warfare that are applied today are the elements of hybridity as well. For example, the unmanned aerial systems equipped with artificial intelligence are an element of hybridity to the current kind of warfare formed in the industrial period. This group of historians also demonstrate that different kinds of non-military actions are included to war, to prevail in the conflict from the very beginning of humankind history. For example, they are intimidation of the enemy, bribing of the leaders, assassination of the leaders, and other actions to undermine the current political regime of the state. From the beginning of the 20th century, when the leader of the Russian Bolsheviks, Vladimir Lenin, advanced the idea that an attack on the foundation of the political regime of the enemy is the most sure, most reliable way to prevail in the military conflict. This kind of concept is widely used in the military conflicts of the globe. The second group, the group of specialists in international relations, they present hybrid war as a combination of the well-known military, conventional military activity of the armed forces and so-named special measures like the ones that were practiced by the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States and the Soviet Committee of State Security, or KGB, during the Cold War. So nothing new in hybrid war besides the label. The new slogan to present, to manifest this kind of warfare is the Chinese phrase of war with traversable boundaries. That is new warfare reality in which victory depends on the synchronized actions of formal military forces in the field of kinetic warfare, warfare produced by lethal weaponry, and other spheres such as informational warfare, cyber wars, psychological wars, and so on. Among the authors of the second group, Mark Galeotti is an outstanding figure. He studies Russian hybrid war, and he advanced an idea that hybridity of current Russian warfare is linked to hybridity of the current Russian state. Galeotti found in the current Russian state such special features as privatization for private purposes, governmental offices, and use of ungovernmental forces, troops, connections, and networks as the formal tools of power. Hybridity of the state burns hybridity of war, and current Russian idea of warfare, how it's presented by Galeotti, consists of combination of formal international warfare of the second half of the 20th century and civil wars with the social upheavals, actions of group of interests, and so on. And it is really very important point of Galeotti of continuation of hybrid structure of the state into sphere of warfare, because it gives us opportunity to understand the nature of hybrid war. Galeotti also invented some special terms or denominations to describe hybrid war, such as guerrilla state that he applies for to current Russian state, and subversion war that he applies to the current Russian style of warfare. Vice versa, contrary to Russia, Galeotti presents the current Western countries as democratic, fair, and constitutional. They don't need hybrid war. However, Galeotti finds a black spot on the Western reputation, that is undercover lobbying of their egotist interests by different social and political factions and groups. And it is another important accent of this researcher that must be used for understanding of hybrid war. Dima Adamski presents a scheme of hybrid warfare that he learned reading Russian military literature and studying actions of Russian politicians and the military. It consists of creating the social upheavals in the victim state to change its political regime to the favorable for Russia. The upheavals are accompanied by the informational warfare, actions of the special forces against the political structure of the victim state, and with the action of nuclear forces to deter the allies and patrons of the victim state from acting to preserve its political regime. Hybrid war, style of hybrid warfare, use vulnerable structures of the victim state and adopt its means of warfare, means of fighting, to hit them, to destroy the victim state. The third group of the experts studying hybrid warfare, they use the terminology, denotations of hybrid war to organize the existing military and non-military forces in the better way to participate in the current conflicts. They understand hybrid warfare as another version of the famous theory of Basil Liddell-Hart, the theory of indirect actions that he developed between the First and Second World Wars. The main point of his concept was dislocation of the enemy, influence on the enemy to move his principal might apart from the direction of the main strike. It could be used not only on the strategical level, on the level of grand strategy, but also on operational level. For example, strikes of drones at the enemy civil population, enemy industrial facilities and cities, provides removal of the enemy's arms of aerial defense from the front line, supporting the success of friendly troops. This kind of actions could be supplemented with the pinpointed assassination of the enemy leaders and other kind of diversions. And it is hybridity of warfare that the third group of experts promotes. The hybridity is based on the understanding of the military structure of the opponent as consisting of 5 interloping spheres, interloping parts. The first part is leadership, the second part is the resources, industry, raw material, energy, and so on. Another part is communications and transport infrastructure. The fourth part is the population, and the fifth part is the armed forces. So each part of the enemy's might, of the enemy's warfare potential needs its own means to be hit with the maximum force and efficiency. Combination of the different kinds of actions against enemy is hybrid warfare. The modern current military doctrines are adapted to this understanding of hybrid warfare. For example, in China, and I describe the innovations to the current military doctrines of China, the United States of America and Western countries and Russia in detail in my slides. In China, the accent is made on imposing on the enemy the kind of war that's unfavorable for it, and concentration of the best fighting equipment and best units to hit the choke points of the enemy. In the United States and the Western countries, the accent is made on the change of the Soviet idea of prevailing of the offensive actions in the modes of warfare to the idea of keeping the initiative by the combination of offensive, defensive actions and other kinds of battlefield activity, such as, for example, evading from clash and so on. The main task is to keep the initiative that gives an opportunity to strike the enemy in the decisive moment, at the decisive point, to get the complete victory. The Russian military doctrine comes further than the Chinese one, than the Western one, in implementing the idea of hybrid war. First of all, it tells that currently non-military, non-conventional kinds of strikes at the enemy obtains the same destructive efficiency as a conventional military strike. It means that they must be applied, implemented equally by the military and non-military organizations to overcome the enemy's resistance. Among them, the Russian military's name promotion of the armed opposition in the enemy country, actions in the gray zone between conventional warfare and non-military actions such as sea blockade, air blockade, actions of private military groups, informational warfare, cyber war, and so on. The conclusions that the Russian theorists of hybrid warfare made are most advanced, because the aim of all of these actions is to transform not only the line of collision between the troops of struggling belligerents, but all territory of the enemy into the area of military actions. In this way, the difference between the strategic, operational and tactical levels of the armed struggle is going down, and difference between offensive and defensive actions is eliminated. What is hybrid warfare? If we make our conclusion, that could be different from the conclusions of the three competing groups of scholars. Lawrence Friedman, studying the conflict in Ukraine, finds a very important feature of the new kind of war. It is low cohesion between different acting groups acting on one side. Each of them is using its own inherent to it means and ways of war. For example, in the Ukrainian conflict, Friedman finds the groups that use the social upheavals, criminal bands, private military forces, mercenaries, state troops and police, private financing, governmental financing, informational warfare, cyber war, and so on. All these different means and tools of war are used by different groups of belligerents who own them, who could apply them, use them in the best, in the most efficient way. Lawrence Friedman is a strategist of the traditional school. He believes that strategy belongs to the state, and military strategy follows politics, and politics is in the hands of government, that is state bureaucracy formed by the elites in democratic way. However, finding the new features of war, of hybrid war, Lawrence Friedman was not able to generalize them due to his adhesion to this concept of strategy. Frank Hoffman, when he advanced a concept of hybrid war, he stressed from the very beginning that hybrid war is a result of the weakening nation states, when ungovernmental, unstate actors could advance on the strategic scene to pursue their own interest by their own means. And this understanding is very important, because in this understanding, the situation with hybrid war today is similar to the situation with the new military epoch in the period of the military revolution in the early modern time. In the epoch of the early modern period, from the late 15th to late 18th century, the new social group of industrial capitalists advanced on the social scene, and they struggled for political power and for economic wealth with the group of the former lords, feudal lords, who possessed power and wealth, exploiting serfs on their land and keeping power inside their feudal hierarchy. The new group, the group of industrialists, the group of capitalists, they needed new force to destroy the domination of the feudal lords. So they advanced firearms, they advanced new kind of troops that was the infantry equipped with firearms, and they advanced the new strategy, the strategy of overseas expansion, colonization, and spheres of economic dominance. However, this new group was not able to transform warfare at once. It preserved its pre-industrial features during 200 or 300 years, when not Europe but Asia remained a leading region of the world, when cold steel prevailed in warfare, when the armies was commanded by feudal hierarchy. Only when the final inventions were made, that was bayonet, high explosives, and rifle, only then warfare was transformed completely. Now we are living in the same epoch. The new group, new social group that are going to wealth and power is keeping our attention. They are the people who command the brain force, the intelligence of humankind, and they try to earn their wealth and to keep, to gain their power by changing the intelligence of the humankind and the way of its life. They advanced the new kind of arms, the new kind of weaponry, the new way of warfare, and unmanned fighting systems with artificial intelligence. It's one of the weapons that they advance. But these new social groups, these new kinds of weapons could not transform warfare at once and completely. The current warfare is still from the industrial epoch, how it was formed finally in the second half of the 20th century. And we could observe only beginning of its transformation. How long it would be, we don't know, because the decisive invention to transform warfare from its industrial stage to its hybrid stage is not made. But we could expect it soon. I'm Vladimir Shirogorov, historian and author of the books War on the Eve of Nations, Conflicting Militaries in Eastern Europe, 1450-1500, and Strategies of Ukrainian War, 1500-1800, that is currently in print. That is webinar 5 from the series of webinars that are preceding my course, Competitive Strategy, on experience of the fair, that I am going to teach from the end of May. I invite you to subscribe to my channels and wait you for my course. Goodbye.